Welcome to another episode of the Business is Blumin podcast. We have a really special guest today. Excited to welcome Wendy Barlin. She is an accountant. She's a business owner, a CPA. She is Wendy. Wendy, how are you doing today?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Excited to have you here. You also have a really interesting story to tell. Also a fellow immigrant like me, and really excited to jump into your story. But just first thing to start out, would love to know kind of when you moved to America and why you moved to America and how that transition was for you when that happened.
So for me, I'm a huge believer in the American dream. I've been here for 25 years and I came here with nothing but a bag of dirty clothes. I was
Mhm.
fortunate in that I spoke English. I had a college degree. So that was definitely a lot easier than some people have it. But I,
Mhm.
I had nothing. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any money. And so I really learned how to use the American financial system from the ground up.
Mhm.
And that's what I've spent the last 25 years teaching my clients and learning myself as I go, and
Mhm.
then teaching my clients what I've learned and what works and what doesn't work and how to navigate this financial system. Because I really do believe in the American dream. There are things that are harder than they were 25 years ago, but it's still possible. Things are still possible if it's something you want badly enough.
Got it. Okay. Awesome to hear. So one of the things you spoke about was that you became an accountant and you wanted to kind of help people achieve this American dream on a personal note, but also helping other people. Would love to know why you chose accounting in particular as opposed to just any other discipline. I mean, there's a bunch out there. What really drew you to the numbers?
Yeah. So, most people don't grow up wanting to be an accountant, right? I don't remember being in preschool and someone going, who wants to be an accountant? No, everybody wanted to be like a fireman or a princess so it was not my dream, but
Mhm.
it was a practical choice, which is what I'm trying to impart to my teenagers
Mhm.
about go to college and pick a practical choice and then make it what you want.
Mhm.
So the actual role of an accountant can be boring. You can be bored out of your mind, or you can take that role as I have chosen to and find the joy in it and find how I can use those skills to actually help people and give myself joy. So I take accounting, I take taxes, I take cash flow, all that stuff that some people go, oh, that sounds awful, but I've made it fun. And
Mhm.
have learned to teach and I have learned to find joy in that work.
Mhm.
So don't be shy to pick something that you might think is not quite as cool and sexy, but can truly bring you joy down the road.
Got it. Awesome. Interesting. And you're a tax accountant, correct?
Correct. So for 25 years, I focused on taxes, but as you know, taxes touch everything else. So people
Mhm.
come into my office thinking they have a tax problem, but usually what we find is they have a money problem
Mhm.
or they have a business problem or they have a spending problem. So it's kind of like everyone wants to blame taxes. And
Yeah.
sometimes it is taxes to blame, but very often the conversation starts with taxes and then it becomes a conversation about something else. So that's why I love what I do because everybody needs a tax return and taxes feel like a very scary thing. But when we can get past that, then we can get real work done.
Got it. Awesome. Because I know a lot of folks are probably go of the ones that go into accounting, those few or many, I don't know for sure, but based off what you said earlier, but a lot of folks choose either audit or tax. Is there a reason you chose the tax path as opposed to the audit path?
I think because I wanted to be a business owner and I wanted to work for myself.
Hmm.
And so when I quit my job and went out on my own, doing taxes was easier because everybody needed a tax return. And that was an easier way to make money and pay my bills. Whereas doing audit, you need a team, you need resources, you need software, you need fancy stuff. Whereas the bar to starting a tax firm was much lower and much easier. It
Hmm.
wasn't that I loved tax more than audit. It was really that it was the quickest, easiest way to achieve financial goals that I was really pushing towards. And then
Hmm.
once that started, then I was able to open that. But if there is someone out there who loves the audit side of the business, then by all means, have that be your goal and figure out how you can go there and do that.
Got it. So it was something you said just sounded a little more practical and like something that a little more attached to business owners and everyone has a tax return. So that's why you ultimately went down that path.
Yep. That's
Okay.
exactly right. And so everybody needs a tax return. And so I started out just doing that. And then over time, I realized, okay, now I can differentiate myself. I could do these kind of taxes and not those. Or I can work with these kind of people and not those kind of people. And so
Mhm.
that allowed me choices along the way to kind of change who I wanted to be, the kind of offering I wanted to put out in the world, and who I wanted to work with. Because that's the biggest benefit after a time is choosing your clients, right? And not just having to deal with whoever comes in the door, but being able to choose people you want to work with every day.
God, it must be nice, kind of at some point, having so many clients that you have. I mean, it's a good issue to have, where you just get to kind of pick and choose who you work with. But really insightful to hear. A quick follow on to that. You said in taxes, you get to work with like a plethora of different tax issues. I'm sure some people think of taxes, they're just like, oh, state taxes, income taxes, too many taxes. Can you talk about some common kind of tax issues that you've gotten a chance to deal with, kind of working with business clients?
So, yeah, there's so many different kinds of taxes, right? So people call me and they go, I don't want to pay tax. I'm like, okay, which
Well,
tax is it you don't want to pay? Because there's sales tax, even when you go to a restaurant. When you
mhm,
stay in a hotel, there's room tax. So which taxes exactly is it that you're angry about? Or is it all taxes? Because I can help you minimize some taxes, but not all taxes because some are just mandated by law. There are
mhm,
also local taxes. Some cities even have taxes. So Los Angeles has a tax, Beverly Hills has a tax, New York City has a tax.
mhm,
And so I think it's very important for business owners specifically to understand the different kinds of taxes and their responsibilities. And then, yes, we can do our best to minimize whichever ones along the way to
mhm.
keep more of your hard earned money. But yeah, tax is kind of lumped into one big bucket and it's really not.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Well, definitely, we'll get into more of that later on. But another thing I wanted to touch upon. I know you say you're different from other accountants, or the way you kind of approach accounting. Would love to know like what you mean by that specifically.
So I do consider myself different than other accountants. So many reasons. But one of the biggest ones is I don't believe in charging by the hour ever, because I want to get to know my clients. The more I get to know you, the better positioned I am to give you advice. And if I'm charging you by the hour, I'm guessing we're not going to do a lot of chit chat because that's going to be expensive, right? Like when I call my lawyer and he says, how was your vacation? I have one answer. Fine. Because I don't want to be billed. I don't want to tell him about it. It's going to be an even more expensive vacation if I start telling him about it. And it was the same as an accountant. People didn't call me when I was hourly because they didn't want to incur a bill. But then
Mhm,
when I moved to a flat fee model, then people would call me all the time. And the more I would have those conversations, an example would be, we'd just be talking and be like, yeah, my teenager's turning 16. I'm going to go buy her a car. I can't decide what to buy. I'm like, oh, let's talk about that. How can we get a tax deduction there? Can we call this a business expense? Well, what's going on with this car? All
mhm,
of a sudden now I'm actually able to help you when the conversation was about your teenager. And if
mhm.
I was charging by the hour, we wouldn't have had that conversation ever. So
Got it.
that's the way I've really been able to separate myself from other accountants, is to say, you pay a flat fee to be part of my community. And then we become colleagues. We become the same team for your results because now we're not watching the clock and we can just talk.
Mhm. Got it. Interesting. It's a cool dynamic because you'll think of a lot of these big four firms like the Deloittes, the kind of KPMGs, EYs, PwCs of the world, and they're the large accounting firms. They'll have really strict fees, or they'll kind of charge fixed fees, right up front before any of the work is done. So it's interesting dynamic of why some firms do this. When in reality, people want to pay based on results, and it's almost like
Correct.
people feel a little dissed, or I don't know what the most politically correct word to say here is, but when you're paying upfront for a service and then as the service goes on, it's almost no accounting puns, but it's kind of deferred revenue or kind of deferred rewards. And you never really know what those rewards are going to look like. So I do think it's a really interesting model and really cool that you do that, because I think it builds a little more trust and faith. And
Right.
also, people may be a little more transparent if they trust you more as an accountant, which probably makes your job a little easier in helping them solve their issues. So I think it's a really interesting model. I don't know why a lot of bigger companies don't do that, but maybe if they did, they would have less client issues. We can leave it at
But
that.
there's I agree with you. I mean, think of all the services we've signed up for, right? Cell phone service. They have all these grand new things when you sign up. And then when you're an existing customer, it just goes like downhill.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book that I read called Never Lose a Customer Again. I think it's by Joey Coleman. And it's an amazing book. And what that taught me to do was to do constant check-ins with people. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't have buyer's remorse. So they don't feel dumped, right? So when you sign up a customer, you make promises. This is what you're going to get. This is how it's going to go. And then you check in with them every 30 days, every 60 days, every 90 days, every 120 days. How are you doing? How are you doing? Are you getting what I said you'd get? Because here's the thing. If they're not, I want people to say so. So they can say, you know what, Wendy, you said I'd get this, but I'm not really getting that. I'm getting this. And yeah, I'm not so happy. Great. Now I can fix it. If I don't ever ask and people are walking around with buyer's remorse, you can be pretty sure they're telling their friends or they're just going to leave. And so I've always deployed the strategy of monthly check-ins. And it's not me checking in, it's someone else on my team
Mm-hmm.
who checks in and goes, so, hey, Daniel, are you happy? I mean, not like ecstatic happy, like jumping up and down because nothing's ever perfect, but are you getting what we said you'd get? And if not, what is missing so we can fix it right away? And I'm a big proponent of that because I've been in the position where someone sells me something and then they just disappear. And I'm like, what happened here?
No, totally. I mean, I think it's a great way of looking at it. A quick follow into that. Do you think there's a reason why a lot of the larger firms kind of try to be, for lack of a better word, a little more conservative or a little more strict with their fee
Right.
model as opposed to providing a flex fee model?
Yep. And people also don't like to leave. So often they'll put up with bad service
Mm-hmm.
or disappointment because they don't want to move. Like my dentist or my doctor. I mean, are they okay? Yeah, but do I want to find a new one? Oh, no. So I'll just stick it out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make me feel good. Like that doesn't make me feel good when I get up and face my day and go, okay, these are the people I'm working with today. I
Mm-hmm.
want them to be thrilled to be working with me. I don't want them to be working with me because the barrier to moving with someone else is just a pain in the butt. And so I think a lot of people I talk to are with firms, big and small, where they're not happy, but they don't want to leave because it's such a pain.
Got it, totally. And it's also, I think, similar to something I was saying before, I think a lot of times, if people try to go somewhere, say an accountant's trying to sign someone and they see that you have to pay some kind of fixed fee, I think right away someone, for lack of a better word, might feel like they're getting screwed or they might not get the best service. But with the flex fee model, I think people feel a little more understood. And I think a lot of times, companies that might be a little more stringent with fees, secretly know that they might not be able to offer the best service as opposed to if someone's
Right.
like, you'll pay us based off what we do to you. I think it builds a lot more trust. And I think it's definitely a better way moving forward. I think a lot of times people may be scared to do that because,
Yep.
obviously if you're a business owner, you want to make money, but it's incredible how, when you just have trust and like you're faithful to your clients, they're faithful to you. So I think it's a really cool dynamic.
I agree. I think we all have to be stewards of our own money. We have to be stewards of our own health. And if you feel that you're not getting what you paid for, if you're not getting the advice you were promised from any professional, I think it's really important to raise your hand and say something and in a polite, courteous tone. I mean, that's what I'm teaching my kids is you need to be a steward for yourself and raise your hand and say, this doesn't seem right to me. Let's talk about it. And
Mhm.
any professional that isn't willing to have that conversation, there's your first sign that something's amiss, right?
Mhm. Totally. I think honestly, now that you think about it, just the thought I had, maybe something they should teach in business school, undergraduate business or undergraduate kind of business courses could be some kind of client management course. Because I think you could teach all the tangibles, you could teach all like the
Right.
finance concepts, all the accounting concepts, but a lot of things, a lot of professionals, what they learn in the fire is like, oh, there's like life happens. There's a lot of client issues, a lot of client sensitivity. So maybe that's an idea of like something that they could teach because I think that would be really worthwhile.
Yeah, some of it is empathy, right? Which you really just can't teach. And
Yeah.
and so in hiring people and building a team, that's always been my strategy. So I can teach you accounting. I can
Mhm.
teach you debits and credits. That's not problem. That's not hard. What I can't teach is empathy. What
Mhm.
I can't teach is customer service. That's a much harder thing that either you do or you do not get.
Mhm.
And so, yes, in business, there's definitely a piece of that some people just have and other people are always going to struggle with.
Yep, totally. I think it's one of the most underrated skills, and I think, like you said earlier, all like the technical skills you can definitely build up. But that part, for those that have it, great. For those that don't have it, if there's a way to help them have it. But it's a really interesting concept. Really appreciate the conversation around there. Another thing to get into, I know you spent some time building up your own CPA firm and having your team. We'd love to know some personal challenges that you had, well, some personal business challenges that you've had kind of building up the CPA firm and how you're able to navigate
So
those.
I think definitely managing a team for me is the most personal challenge in that I was never really taught management skills, right? So you go to school, you learn about accounting, you learn about taxes, and they're like, okay, go to work. And I watched the people ahead of me, partners in firms, managers, leaders, and I was like, yeah, I don't really like the way they're doing it. And the world has changed. People's expectations are different. You know, before it was like, you're happy to have a job, just smile and say thank you.
Mhm.
And now people's expectations of the workplace is different. It's very hard for me to balance the people side, like really caring about my people compared
Mhm.
to getting the work done. So I found that being remote was the best strategy for me because I'm not a micromanager. And I did not like walking around an office watching what people were doing all the time. I'd be like, what are you doing? And why are you doing it that way? So
Mhm.
I am much calmer and a better manager when I am home and I
Mhm.
don't see what you're doing. So I give you a task and you just go away and get it done by the deadline. Let me know if you have help. Raise your hand if you need help. Raise your hand if you have questions, but get the job done. And then I'm not as worried about whether you're doing it at 5 in the morning and watching Netflix all day,
Mhm.
as long as the work is done. That took a lot of stress off me. And I
Mhm.
think it's very important for everybody to find a management style that works for their personality. I work better hands off. Get the
Mhm.
work done. Let me know where it's done. We'll all be happy. That way I'm not micromanaging.
Got it. Interesting. So, do you feel as though kind of when you shifted to a more remote model or a more hands-off model, that built a little more trust between you and your team and kind of made everyone run a little more efficiently than before?
So I have to, that means I have to find people who are self-starters and
Yeah.
will get the job done and are not going to lie on the couch all day and watch TV and get nothing done,
Mhm.
because I'm not there to hold their hand every day. So that puts the pressure on me when hiring to make sure that I am hiring people who are going to work within the model that makes sense to me.
Mhm.
It's not a one size fits all. And I've tried the other way, and part of me wishes I was that way, that I could have this Google-esque office where everybody goes to lunch and has happy hour on Fridays. But I'm not a good manager in that situation. I've learned that about myself. And so I've had to create a model that works for me and my style. And so I think that's every business will have its own culture that way.
Got it. So, would your advice be just not even kind of folks running their own accounting firm, but anyone running their own businesses or just managers in general to find the management style that works for them and then try to hire employees that are synchronous or kind of fit with that management style? Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, because we're kind of told it needs to be this way, right? Like Google and Amazon are telling us this is how it should be. This is a great office to work in. Everybody wants this. Um, but it's not everybody. And so we have to find what works for you and your business and your style.
Definitely, I agree. I think a lot of times people can get gilded, or people, well, these are huge, huge companies, Google, Amazon, like the fangs of the world, the biggest tech companies we have. A lot of times they'll see, oh, this is what they're doing, so it must be right. But in reality,
Yeah.
it's happen to be really large and really huge organizations, and candidly, everything in a big organization internally isn't as clean as every. No, I'm not saying like dirty practice, but like things are just a mess, like a lot of the business processes. So but people don't see that if they're not working with them as clients. So a lot of times
Right.
they'll, oh, if that's how they work, that must work for everybody. But I
Right.
definitely resonate with your point in the sense that, like, no, like that just happens to work for them because that's their culture. Realistically, you have to find what works for you. So I definitely agree with you on that point.
Correct. Great.
Awesome. So another thing I wanted to ask, similar to something was going on earlier, but kind of building your firm and kind of having a great team and whatnot. I'm sure you've had plenty of clients throughout the years. Are there any interesting client stories that, obviously, not to get too sensitivity or kind of protect your clients' details, but are there any interesting client stories you'd have to share, or kind of any common client issues you'd always see with businesses?
Wow. I think I'll tell you the worst thing that ever happened.
Oh, awesome! Well, we love
And
stories.
and and this has stayed with me for probably at least 10 years. So I had a client, she was a psychotherapist,
Mhm.
so a very successful psychotherapist, made hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's probably in her early 60s. and she had no savings. She had no savings because her son, who she loved dearly, had a dream of being a musician. He never made any money. He was about 40 years old. She was still supporting him and his wife and 2 kids. And I said to her one day, your son needs to get a job.
Mhm.
And her son was on the phone and he said, I'm not qualified to do anything. What am I going to do? Go and work at Starbucks? And I said, well, it seems to me
Mhm.
that right now you earn 0. So if you went to Starbucks and earned $10 an hour, that would be like getting a raise.
Mhm.
And
Sound like
the
it is.
mother, my client, went mad. She said to me, how dare you talk to my son that way? How
Mhm.
dare you? And all of a sudden I was like, you know what? She's right. I, I was right, but I had no place
Mhm.
sticking my nose in their family business in that way. And so that was one of those lessons that taught me that it is about money, but it's not always about money. And there's so much more going on in people's lives. And that was kind of when I learned that there are times when, even though I know I'm right and I have an answer, I need to just be quiet.
Mhm. Got it. Interesting. So it's one of those things where, you see an issue going on, maybe it resonates to you, but it's kind of, you could maybe imagine, like forbid this stuff would happen personally in your life, but you can, maybe the mom took over in that case instead of kind of
Yeah.
being, which is, we all make mistakes. We all say something sometime, but the lesson
Yeah.
learned was in the sense that even if you feel one way, to just kind of try to advise them more on the financial matters instead of the family stuff.
So
But
not everybody wants to hear the real truth. Sometimes people want to hear the truth, but they kind of don't want to hear the truth. So I've learned to temper my truth telling.
no, no worries. Really appreciate you sharing that story. Are there any other high level kind of issues that you saw a lot of your business, a lot of your like clients as businesses deal with that you think are frequent or people could use as advice today, or are they kind of more ordinary things?
I think to trust your gut, Daniel. I think
Mhm.
to trust your gut, because when I would have prospective clients come in or meet with them like this, um, sometimes my gut would tell me, Wendy, I don't really like this person. I'm getting a weird feeling right now. But I would look and go, well, they seem nice and they run a good business and they're going to be a good client. They're going to pay a lot of money, which is good for my mortgage. So
Mhm.
I'm going to take them on. I'm going to work with them, even though my gut was like, I don't, something's up. And every time I did that, it would end up a disaster. Every time. It
Mhm.
would be maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, but that relationship would end badly.
Mhm.
And that was the other piece that I've learned over time, is to trust my gut. When I'm
Mhm.
having a conversation with someone, no matter how great they may seem as a client, if my intuition is telling me I don't feel good about this for whatever reason,
Mhm.
walk away. It's not a good client fit. And,
Got it.
and I think too often, especially when we're building our businesses and we need the money, we say yes to clients that really should be a no.
Mhm. Got it. Interesting. So, awesome. Okay. No, interesting to hear about that. So you're saying you can face a variety of client issues, but also when you're selecting clients, if you have some kind of gut feeling, some intuition and advice for other business owners or tax operators, maybe go with your gut regarding who you're taking on as clients.
I would say if you take a client when your gut tells you no,
Mhm.
um, end the relationship as soon as you can. Find a good reason, push up the price, say they're not doing what they said they were going to do, let them know there's been a change or an issue, but
Mhm.
don't wait. It's the same with, what's that expression about, like, take a long time to hire, but fire quickly? It's
Mhm.
the same with clients as it is with team members. Take your time with clients and then fire them quickly, because the longer you wait, the worse that situation ends up, in my experience.
No, yeah, totally. Definitely, I agree with you. Awesome. Really interesting to hear about that. Another thing on a more personal matter, Noah, you recently sold your CPA, correct?
Yeah, so uh it's really weird feeling. I thought I would be so excited and so happy to get rid of the stress and know that I put my clients in a really good spot with a really awesome team. And I did for about the first 2 or 3 months. And then I felt really bored. And I missed those people. I had 250 clients that I knew really well. I knew everything about their lives. I knew their kids. I knew where they went on vacation. I knew their dreams. And so after about 3 months, I started to actually really miss the people. I started to miss the excitement of all the stuff going on all the time. And so that's when I've gone back to doing consulting and taking on advising clients, because I really missed that. I missed those connections with people. So now I'm not doing tax preparation anymore. I'm doing more advising and consulting work, but it's the same connection with people. And that's what I enjoy.
Got it. Awesome. So is the consulting work you're doing now, is it more business oriented or more individual oriented?
Yep. And so for anyone thinking of selling, my recommendation is to take the time to plan for that next year. What are the things that you really want to do? What's important to you? What is the next year going to look like? Because so many business owners that I speak to that are either in the process of selling or wanting to sell, they're just looking to that finish line like I was. You're just so focused on that finish line and getting the deal done because it's such a stressful time
Sure.
that they're not actually looking beyond that. And so I would say before you sign, take the time to really plan what the next 3 to 5 years are going to look like, because they happen fast. And it can sometimes be a, wait, whirlwind. What just happened?
I think, yeah, a lot of times, even in life, we might get caught up in like the short term stress, and then after we're like, oh wait, like what really, what's supposed to happen after that? So definitely, definitely kind of a comparison there, but really interesting to hear. So, kind of after you've done that, are you saying like the consulting you do, is it still primarily for like businesses or individuals, or what's the main kind of accounting work that you're up to now?
So mostly I'm working with business owners right now and helping them find more tax deductions, helping them see what strategies they can implement that their tax preparer isn't doing. Most tax people out there are just busy filing returns, thousands of them. And they don't have time to kind of step back and look at someone's situation and say, these are the pieces you're missing. This is what you could do better. So that's what I'm doing. And I give them suggestions, and then they take those back to their tax people to get the actual returns filed.
Okay, awesome, interesting, and kind of, I'm sure you see still some kind of common struggles that these people face. Are there any other common struggles that you see with these businesses face, or kind of individuals regarding tax returns or tax season?
I think the biggest issue by far, Daniel, is people not setting aside enough money for taxes. So it gets to the end of the year and their CPA says, okay, here's your paperwork. You owe $20,000. And they're like, what? I owe what? I don't have that. So one of the biggest pieces that we put into place is a separate tax savings account where you take a percentage of all your deposits every single week and put it into a tax savings account. Take it off the table, get it out of your bank account, because if it sits there, you're going to spend it. And so we need to take that tax money and put it away. It's not yours. You're just holding it until the IRS is ready to accept it. And that's probably the biggest stressor I see, whether it's a small business or a large business. It's relative concept. Big dollars are big dollars. And paying money over to the government is always stressful for people. And that's probably where I see most people needing the biggest help, is how much and how.
Got it. Okay, so maybe it's good advice, especially for folks running their own businesses, just when they're just starting out, especially if they're doing their own kind of bookkeeping, to always have an account from the start, so that person can be a financial advisor or a business guide for them to make sure they're compliant with the various tax laws and various taxes that they have to pay.
That's exactly right.
Definitely. Awesome. We'll definitely keep that in mind in the future. If I but another thing I wanted to get into, so you've actually written a few books on kind of taxes, accounting, some common issues people face. We'd love to know if you could speak about those and kind of some advice people could get from reading your books.
So I wrote those books because I got the same questions every day. So when I was busy running my firm, I had 250 clients I was responsible for. And so I was busy. And yet it seemed to me that I was asked the same questions over and over and over again. So I sat down and wrote the book, That's Deductible, based on the questions that business owners were asking me every day. It's a quick, easy read. It's got funny cartoons included that hopefully will make you smile. And it really just answers a lot of the basic questions for people. And then Never Budget Again was my passion project because as a CPA, people always assumed I would be good at budgeting and I would be good at money. And that's simply not true. So I have the same budgeting and cash flow struggles that every other American does because the American marketing machine is always in my inbox telling me what I need to buy and why. So I've really always struggled with budgeting, and I was very down on myself about it. Like, why can't I budget? Everybody else can. I've tried sticky notes, I've tried books, I've tried apps, I've tried everything, and nothing worked. I always failed. And I sat down one day and I said, there has to be a better way. I can't be the only person that struggles with this. So I kind of created a way for myself to manage my money without the constraints of a budget. Because what I said was people like me who are dreamers, people like me who are visionaries, we really struggle with the narrow mindedness of a budget. Like you can only spend $200. It just makes me crazy.
Same.
Because I'm an abundance thinker. So I need to think in bigger terms. What can I buy? What can I spend? Not what can't I have? And so I put together that book called Never Budget Again, based on the strategies that I have implemented in order to learn to manage my money. And my favorites are Money Day. I take one day a week where I look at my money, I log into my accounts, I look at my credit cards, kind of create an awareness of where I spent money last week and what I intend to do for next week. The other thing I do is I keep my vision board front and center all the time. So I have it here in front of me as I'm looking at you right now. It's the screensaver on my phone. It's everywhere in my calendar, so that I am constantly facing pictures representing what I want for my life. And that helps me with my day-to-day buying choices. So it doesn't always work. And there are days I buy things I shouldn't. But for the most part, it helps me look and go, okay, if I really want that trip down the Andes River, is it important to buy this pair of shoes today? And sometimes it's a yes and sometimes it's a no, but that awareness has really helped. So that's why I wrote Never Budget Again. It's also a fun, easy read for anybody else that's struggling with budgeting.
Sounds good. If anyone's curious to read Wendy's books, I'll link with them in the description. Feel free to check them out. They're as good as Wendy says they are. I'm sure we'll get some funny laughs and cartoons and also some great text tips. So win-win all the way. Really appreciate you sharing that. I just a few other things I want to get into, a bit more of a high level. So I came as an immigrant, we're really interested in accounting, built up the CPA firm, still doing some tax work. On a more high level, would love to know in your life kind of what brings you happiness or how you're able to find happiness.
I am an optimist by nature.
Awesome.
I'm an optimist by nature and I'm an abundance thinker. And so anytime people around me say, well, what if you run out of money? What if you lose everything? What if? And I'm like, then I'll start again. Then I'll go get a job. Then I'll work at Starbucks. I believe that we can all do whatever we want to do. And it's just about focusing on that and knowing what you want and just stay in your path, go get what you want. And that's always been my philosophy. And I try and help others see it that way too.
Got it. That's awesome. It's a really beautiful answer. I really appreciate you sharing that, Wendy. And last thing, is there anything else that you think people should know or any of the listeners should know that you'd like to share?
Let the guilt go. Let the guilt go. I see so much guilt. Oh, Wendy, I have credit card debt. Oh, Wendy, I bought something I shouldn't have bought. Let it go. We all make bad decisions. I make bad decisions. And we got to let it go and forgive yourself. And tomorrow's another day. You can make a different choice tomorrow. I think there's just so much negative guilt surrounding money and our choices that we all have to work really hard every day to let that go and say, tomorrow's a new day. I'll make better choices tomorrow.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Wendy, you have a really incredible story coming to this country and also becoming an accountant, having great client stories and building up and selling your CPA firm. And really appreciate you sharing some of that life advice and practical advice. But overall, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure.